You don't need to spend money every single minute of every day in order to be happy on stuff.
Hey everybody, welcome to today's Jeff Heilman project. I'm Jessica Heilman, and we have got an exciting subject. I don't know if it's really that exciting. It's actually probably pretty more mundane, because what we're talking about is something that everybody has to deal with, everybody has to go through. It seems like there's either two camps, Jeff. You either have a budget or you don't. And it seems like there's either spenders or savers. What's your thought on budgeting? Because today's topic is living in the Bay Area on a budget, how to successfully do it. We've done it. You and I have been on a budget. After going through the Dave Ramsey Financial Peace Program, that it didn't immediately inaugurate right away, but that was really one of the leading factors into getting together on a family budget. But what's your, just like, if I were going to ask you for a sound bite of like key thought on budgeting, what would that be?
I think the real thing about living on a budget is about expectations. You're setting expectations on what's valuable for the team. You're getting an agreement on that. And, we tried living on a budget for a while, and then we started making a lot of money, and then we didn't live on a budget at all. That was catastrophic. I probably spent $2 million not living on a budget over a 20-year period of time, maybe 15-year period of time. What I found is that people that live on a budget, there are people who have to live on a budget, and there are people who don't. And the people who think, I don't need to live on a budget, maybe they don't, but if they did, they would probably get more use out of their capital. So I think the number one thing is to frame it, like figure out what the philosophy is. Why even live on a budget in the first place? Why not just spend it all until it's gone every month? I found that doesn't work for me personally, because I value the use of capital for things over and above, emergencies and basic minimums of survival. To be able to have money to invest in a business, money to invest in real estate, money to invest in over maintaining things you care about, like cars and watches and homes. Capital is valuable for those things. But if you have a husband and wife situation where one person really values capital and the other one couldn't care less about it, that's going to create tension in the relationship. And to me, the whole point of having a budget and having a budget meeting is being able to set expectations and stick to them so that everybody's values are taken care of.
Yeah, we meet every 2 weeks, regardless of payday. It seems to fall on payday more often than it actually started back when we had a more regular payday from a different job.
Some people get paid on 1st and the 15th.
Some people
get paid every 2 weeks.
Some people even get paid every Friday.
We get paid every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
At the day job. So I have 26 paychecks a year, but we have a budget meeting based on when I was at Oracle, which is 1st and the 15th.
And we encourage anybody, even if you're in your own business, to continue to have a cadence. However often, maybe it's once a month, maybe you can go longer because you have it set up to where you can do once a month, but definitely a regular cadence with anybody that is having an input into where your finances are going. Like, I've been considering even having our older kids that live with us to even sit in on some of the budgeting meetings, simply because, hey, if you're going to be a part and you're going to have a say in where that money's going, then you should be aware of what the phone bill is, what the rent is, what the utilities are, and you can see. You might not necessarily be financially contributing, but you will remember to turn the light off when you leave the room if you recognize that electricity is going to cost, $600 a month or $700 a month. So having regular meetings is one of the ways. If I were to like bullet point and say, how do you live on a budget in the Silicon Valley? Number one is have regular conference meetings, have regular business meetings, have regular accountability meetings with whoever has say into where the money is being allocated or being spent. I think for me personally, the idea and the concept of a financial budget really was cemented when I began studying more about nutrition and health and physical calories and caloric intake, because it does seem like people who don't really consider financially having a budget, like where they spend their money, it kind of hits home when you tell them, well, would you eat 3 hamburgers in a sitting, because that's like, I mean, everybody understands a hamburger is high caloric intake, right? Like it's like 2,000 calories for a hamburger. And so if you can help people to understand, look, you wouldn't eat, 9,000 calories for lunch. You have a budget, regardless of whether you're recognizing it or not. You have a cap on your caloric intake. There's a budget. That's all a budget is it's saying I'm only going to allocate myself so much worth of ingesting. And when you're spending money, you're ingesting, you're eating, whether you're literally eating it or not, the bank account is ingesting what you're spending. You're spending a budgeted amount. And so if you can have constraints on how much you spend, you're just going to be healthier overall. You're going to have a healthier bank account, just like you'd have a healthier body if you only allocated yourself. My goal is like 500 calories per meal. That's from all the Noom and, all the different studying that I've done based on calories and intake and outgo. If I can keep myself to 1,500 calories in a day, 500 per meal, then I'm going to feel like I've won that day. So if we can have a budget to where we're going to spend, X amount of dollars, $800 on groceries in 2 weeks or $1,000 on groceries in 2 weeks, then I will have a healthier bank account on the whole because I've maintained my caloric budget, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah. And some people say, save 3% or save 5%. And that's, I suppose that's a good practice. The way I look at it is every expenditure is an attack on our savings. Like every dollar that I make goes straight into a holding account.
And health-wise, every calorie I eat goes straight to my butt.
Exactly. Every calorie you eat over what you
Sure.
expend,
Yeah.
it goes toward being overweight. And so I look at every dollar that comes out of the account as an attack on savings. And so you have to keep, I try to, I've certainly had some lean years, but we try to keep $100,000 to $200,000 in cash at all times, because the biggest constraint for business growth usually is cash and cash flow. So at 200,000 in cash, I could lose my job and we would be okay for at least a year, based on what the minimums are for keeping our lives afloat. Anything over that, you want to probably have working for you. And some people would say, oh, you're wasting 5% or 6% for cash. But if the biggest constraint to business growth and the biggest reason why people lose focus is because of cash flow, the minimums of cash of say 20 to 50 or even $100,000 in cash, let's say you're losing 3% or 2.5% on that from a cash value perspective, but you're gaining the ability to stay focused on building a business that's growing at 40% CAGR on $1 million of market cap. That's $400,000 of growth and maintenance of momentum just in a year, going from $1 million market cap to $1.4 million. $400,000 in exchange for $2,500. That seems like a pretty good return to me.
And as you're talking about that and being able to successfully have money in savings, I think that in budgeting, if number one was have regular cadence meetings, then number two for me, for living on a budget successfully in the Silicon Valley, would be to be able to learn how to manage your kitchen, if you will. Like, learn how to be able to successfully get the things that you need, get the tools that you need, watch YouTube videos, devote some time. If you find yourself constantly running out of money, constantly having the thought of I can't move out of my parents' house, or I can't live on my own, or I can never have a place in the valley and I'm going to have to leave. You need to get more education, right? Like, that could just be a matter of maybe you're eating out all the time because you don't know how to cook. And so, how beneficial would it be to learn how to cook something, to get really comfortable with what you have? I've learned how to be able to take $300 worth of groceries and feed 9 people for, at least 3 or 4 days. I know confidently that I could get a business week, a 5-day week at $500. I could easily feed 9 people for 5 days because I know how to cook, because I've done the work required to learn. So, number one is have regular meetings and get to the reality of how much is coming in and how much is going out.
Yep.
Because you might need to make adjustments. You might have to get a second job.
Well, yeah, the other
you
thing
might
is,
have to do something else.
where do you put the information you get? So I love Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow quadrant, talking about an income statement and a balance sheet. For those of you who've never taken accounting before, I recognize that could seem a little scary. And I'll put a visual up that's really simple. Basically, you have a box with a line in the middle horizontally. That's your income statement. Income's on the top, expenses are on the bottom.
Yeah.
And then what's left over is your cash flow. And then you have a box with a line down the middle of it. Assets on the left, liabilities on the right. That's your balance sheet. And what happens is you have flow of income that comes from your assets into your income. And then you have some amount. Let's just do simple dollar amounts. You have $1,000 a month of income and you have $500 a month of expenses. 1,000 minus 500 is going to be $500 in cash flow. That cash flow then goes down back into the asset column. It goes through the liability column, pays off any debt or debt minimums, and then goes into assets. That, if you can look at your finances through a lens of cash flow, how much cash, like there's months where I'm in commission sales to where we spend more than we make.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we spend $3,000, $5,000. A month ago, we spent $10,000 more than I actually brought in due
salary.
to yeah, because of the salary. Because I didn't have any commission check that month, which is it's not good when you're spending that much more. Except for the fact that I had, I think, 45,000 liquid that month. So I could take the hit of the $10,000. And we also had a lot of hits. There were a lot of things that were not anticipated. Cars breaking down, pets needing care, etc. But there's also months where you'll make $100,000 or $200,000, and you obviously don't want to spend all of that. So that holds your buffer in there. But if you know how much your assets are, and your liabilities and your minimums on debt, and you know what your cash flow looks like, you can say, hey, I've got 50 grand in the bank or 100 grand in the bank, and I know that I can spend 2,000 a month more than what I make every month for 2 years and still have enough left over. That's when I talk about everything is an attack on savings. Alex Hermosi says this all the time. Every good deal is really just an opportunity to spend money or to volunteer to lose the battle on the attack on your savings. Spending money feels good to a lot of people. To me, it doesn't. To me, spending money is a necessary evil in order to keep the lights on, but it's an attack on the work that I've done in order to produce wealth. And so I look at spending money as the absolute minimum. I want to pay the absolute minimum amount of money in taxes. And I want to spend, if I'm going to spend money, I want a tax write-off, or I want it to be able to grow assets so that I can make passive cash flow from whatever money that I've made physically, actively from working. And not everybody has that point of view, but that's the point of view that I have on it. If you look at your money through a lens of income over expenses for cash flow, if you look at your money from assets minus liabilities equals your net worth, it will help you start to see and build a philosophy about what do we want our net worth to be? What do we value from a cash flow perspective? Do we value eating out? Jessica and I actually happen to value eating out quite a bit. We go out to eat quite a bit because it's time away from work, away from the kids, that we can actually collect ourselves. And we probably go out, I don't know, at least 3 or 4 times a week, at least for the last 20 years. And is that a wise expenditure of money? Some people would say that it's not, but we value that time together. And we spend so much time in the house. We work incredibly long hours. I mean, we both are 80 to 100 hours a week working. And so if we can go eat out for 45 minutes or an hour, hour and a half, and enjoy that time together, the main thing is not should you go out to eat or shouldn't you go out to eat. It's what are the expectations? My expectations is we're going to burn $1,000 or $1,500 a month eating out. That's the normal expectation. We budget for it. We have it available in savings or in credit to be able to do that. And that's part of our lifestyle and how we decompress. Some people would say that's foolish. You should put your money into other stuff. And I would say if that's what the value is, then I would listen
Well,
to it.
I'd also like to, if we could double click on that for a minute. Part of what it began us eating out was having actually no money at all and living in some pretty questionable locations. I mean, we've had some very low rent, if you know what I mean, how it places. But what we would do in order to help us elevate where we were going was we didn't have very much money, but we would set aside a budget for a dessert. And so we would go to a really nice restaurant in the other side of town, and we would make sure to get our subconscious mind exposed to the way that it could be, put on our nicest clothes, put on our makeup, ask somebody to watch the kids or pay for a babysitter, go to the nicer part of town, sit down at the table. And if, all we could afford because the menu had we're reading menus, right to left about the cost of things, but recognizing, setting our expectation that, look, we're going to go spend time together. We're going to go get around and become more comfortable and acclimated to people who make a lot of money and where they would be. And we'll go and we'll sit and we'll share a dessert. And even if it was just sharing a dessert, but yet we're sitting in a fine dining restaurant with a steak knife and a fork and linens and have no business being there. I mean, the kind where you got to park your car around the corner and walk to the restaurant because you don't want your jalopy to be seen. But being able to constantly reframe the picture of where we believe that we were going or where we needed to be. We at 23rd Street in Portland, when we lived in Portland at the time, Papa Haydn, there were some really great restaurants that we went and just had dessert because that's all we could afford. Always making sure to leave a good, you got to tip your waiter because you're taking up a table that they could be making, make sure that your waiter gets a good, take that into your budget consideration. Like if you're going to leave $30 for your waiter, and you only have $20 for the food, but you're still taking up a table for an hour, you're only spending $50, drink the water, have the nice dessert.
Sometimes we spend $15.
Yeah.
But we buy 2 cups of coffee at $3 a piece.
Yeah.
We'd buy a piece of pie for maybe $6.
Yeah.
And that gets you up to $12. And then we'd leave, maybe $4, $5.
Well, I mean, when we would go to the fine dining, we would make sure to leave if we're going to be there for an hour, they would have made $20 in tips for an hour. Yeah, so you give $6,
$7 on a tip, and somebody say, well, your pie was only $6 or $7. Yeah. Well,
the point was
if you want them to want you back.
Exactly. And it's really, servers weren't making any more money than what we were making. And they were looking at us and we're like, dude, thank you. And they're like, wow, you took care of me. And I know you don't have that much money here. We'll take off 10%. Or they'd be
we get a lot of free stuff at restaurants.
They'd be so friendly.
We don't even ask for it.
They'd be so friendly with us because we're all just trying to, live. We weren't entitled and arrogant and acting like jerks.
That's exactly when did we stop thinking that this life is about survival?
It's about serving, yeah.
Everybody is one bad day away from making really bad decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Rich people, poor people alike. And I think sometimes when we look at the luxury that the productivity of the internet age has produced, we forget about the fact that we're this far away from being on Skid Row, most of us.
Yeah.
Most of the time. One drug habit, one incarceration, one divorce, one death of a loved one, one job loss that curtails into a series of not being able to pay your bills. And there's homelessness, drug addiction, and death. It's the fact that I'm not trying to be morbid, but when we're looking at $10,000 Hermes handbags and thinking, boy, wouldn't that be nice? I think sometimes that works against us because we forget the opportunity to be happy by just being grateful for the fact that, like, we're surviving, we're thriving, we're doing well. And I think, to me, when I look at budgets, I look at them like defense against loss. It's a way of saying we're not going to spend $30,000 this month. Or let's say your budget's, $5,000 a month. Saying we're not going to spend 8 this month. We're going to spend 5 or maybe 5,500, right? And you take that and you can multiply by 5 or multiply by 10, depending on what you make. But you don't need to spend money every single minute of every day in order to be happy on stuff. And to the degree that you can put a budget in place, stick to that budget, enjoy the expectations being met of watching your cash flow, it actually frees you up to spend time thinking about things that are way more important than just whether or not you're going to be able to make the rent.
It frees you up because you have capital that you could invest in other things. It frees you up in your ability to be creative. I mean, that would be number 3. Number 1 is regular communication regarding what's coming in, what's going out. Number 2 is ongoing education to help yourself to be able to successfully live on a budget, like getting the books, getting the tapes, reframing your mind toward living budget-wise. And then number 3 is recognizing that the freedom that comes and the creativity that comes. I cannot tell you how many times I've set aside a budget and said, okay, how much money do I have for the garden? Okay, I've only got $100. Okay, okay. I mean, that's exciting to me to be able to have bumpers or like being able to look at having a limited, it becomes a game. Being able to have the out of bounds range is anything over $100. Okay, so I'm going to go to Home Depot and I'm going to look at whatever I can do to stay within $100 and be able to beautify my space or beautify my garden for less than $100. What can I do? And then the wheels start turning, and then you go to Home Depot and the annuals are 30% off, and you're like, oh wow, I thought there was going to be a lot more than that. And then things like the universe or whatever you want to call it starts bending in your favor because now you're able to do even more with what you've got. It's almost as if you get this reward to life when you understand constraint theory and you understand that you can successfully thrive within your boundaries of what you're setting for that expense. And then if when you're done, you're done. You tap out. Okay, I'm done. I got my $100, $99.96, and I'm just going to have to wait, and I'm going to have to discipline myself. And I'm going to be able to do more next time. Or now that I've invested this $100 in my garden, now I can take the time to water it. Now I can take the time to enjoy it. Now I can take the time to understand and plan for my next project.
Yeah, and we had the opportunity not long ago. There was an exhibit I really wanted to see in New York, and we're in between big payments. We had some big payments last year, made some good money last year, and moved some stuff into investments. And some of that stuff did well, some of it didn't. And we got some big payments on the horizon. I mean, it's multiple 6 figures just coming in a few weeks. And I was dealing with cash flow issues. But because I have some money in savings, and because I have frequent flyer miles, and because I've got friends that run hotels in different cities, Madeline and I were able to fly to New York City, and our airfare and hotel accommodations were, a few $100s, just a couple $100 because we flew on frequent flyer miles, paid the taxes on a couple of business class tickets that were upgraded because of status on an airline, stayed in a hotel for a few $100s in tipping to my friend who's a general manager for a hotel out there. And basically for the cost of ground transportation and a couple of nice dinners out, we got a 5-day trip to New York.
Yeah.
That didn't really cost that much, was super fun. I was never stressed about it. And we took the subway. Right, some people are against the subway, but I love the subway. If I was in New York, I'd never have a car ever. And it's much faster than ground transportation during the day because it's gridlock in rush hour. And so that was an example of like, it's think and grow rich.
Right.
Think and grow rich. The guy that did the 62 Habits of Success that lives down in Santa Barbara, he said people basically save money.
Jack Canfield.
Yeah, they save, they skimp in the areas where they can so that they can live large in the areas where they really want to. And I really wanted to go to New York with Madeline and cover this exhibit that was being shown. And it had to be at that moment in time. Well, I hadn't spent my frequent flyer miles over the last year, and I hadn't called in a favor for my buddy that runs a hotel out there. And so I did both of those things, and we were able to manage the fact that we were in between cash flows, and still able to get what we wanted because we are conservative and we look at our money through the lens of a balance sheet and an income statement.
Yeah, Jack Canfield wrote a book, Success Principles, and he's the author of Chicken Soup for the Soul, big franchise in the 90s, Chicken Soup for the Soul. And in his book, he talks about how rich people, as he's interviewed people and done for Chicken Soup and the Soul, he's had to interview a bunch of people.
A lot of people, yeah.
He says rich people save money on the things that do not matter. For example,
toilet paper,
Hanes, white, your BVDs, your socks. Like if it doesn't matter, if you standardize on white gym socks and you don't give a rip where your white gym socks come from, they will save money on white gym socks by going to Walmart to get a pack of white gym socks. They save money in the areas where it does not matter or make a difference to them. And then they take the money that they're saving and they put it into the things that are important to them. So, for example, if travel or investments, or, we have friends that are super successful and they love wine. And so they will spend, they'll have their whole wine cellar full of bottles of wine. But then somebody might look at them and go, man, they're so cheap because they're over here at Walmart, haggling over the cost of fruit, or they'll go to an antiques an antique thing and they'll negotiate. They're the first ones to offer $5 when somebody, how much is that thing? Oh, 50. Oh, how about $5? And you're like, man, these guys are real jerks because they're like haggling. It's like, no, because obviously if they can't get it for $5, it doesn't matter to them. They won't get it. But they're working on constantly looking for the best price for the things that don't matter, that you have to have: toilet paper, paper towels, socks, underwear, so that they can then go and have Beechcraft, Bonanza, aircraft, and the things that are important to them. Budgeting and successfully budgeting anywhere, let alone the Silicon Valley, which is still one of the most expensive places to live in the entire nation, is have regular meetings, know where you're at financially, know what's coming in, know what's going out, number one. Number two is to consider education, ongoing education towards finances. Don't put your head in the sand when it comes to money, but get yourself some education, take some classes, whatever you need to do in order to increase how to live successfully on a budget. Number three, get creative, enjoy the creative process. Don't see boundaries as limitations, but see them as a game, being able to play the game of mastering living on that budget. And then finally, just be able to really recognize and hopefully be grateful for what you do have, because gratitude is the start of it all.
I would agree. I would say, know what your vendors are, right? Make a list of all your vendors and make a list of what their minimums are. Put a little box, and I'll have Andrew put a visual together for the Robert Kiyosaki income statement. But know what your cash flow is. If you know what your cash flow is and you know how much cash you got, then you could say, okay, I'm going up by $500 a month or $50 a month. We used to run on an all cash budget, and sometimes I'd have $50 left at the end of the month. And I remember I was like, thank God I'm $50 up instead of $50 down, right? Yeah. And that's with nothing in savings.
Yep.
So if you're $50 plus or minus your budget and you got no money in the bank, That's what we started with.
I think that I would be missed to not mention, if you go online and search Financial Peace University template spend, I think it's the spending template, Dave Ramsey's spending template. It's just a good. We're not Big Ramsey or Kiyosaki, or you'll see we're like everywhere. We really have had
I like things that Ramsey talks about with regard to making sure you have a cash buffer.
Yeah, I think that for me, because I am the one in the family that spends like allocates where the money goes, it has been so helpful to have a template to say, PG&E and go down the line.
Exactly right.
And so I would recommend looking up. It doesn't have to be Ramsey's Financial Peace. It could be anybody's. If you look for a spending template and just plug it into I use Google Google Sheet. We used to use Microsoft Excel. And we have a column for all of our monthly expenses, including Netflix, including Apple, the family sharing plan through Apple iTunes or whatever it is. Everything that is coming out consistently every single month, and then in the right column have an idea of what that usually rounds out to, and then that way every 2 weeks when you're paying your bills, you can see that they're all getting paid. My system is it starts out yellow, everything's highlighted yellow, and then it goes to blue. Once it's cleared, it goes to blue, and then I know when I go for the next after 2 weeks, and I'll see, oh, this one's still yellow. That means that the money still needs to stay in the account, and that's not money that I have to spend because it hasn't gone to blue yet.
Yeah, and we have an account that we transfer we call it our vendor payroll account. When you have business, you zero out your payroll account every 2 weeks, and we zero out our vendor payroll account every 2 weeks. So we have money that sits in what effectively should be a high yield savings. And then we transfer twice a month. We transfer money from that to the vendor payroll. And then from that, we fund your personal account, my personal account, the kids' personal accounts out of that vendor payroll. So we're only doing 2 transfers from the trust per month. And eventually we'll get it to the point where we're doing 1 transfer a month for the trust, and then try to keep a cash balance, something that allows you to be comfortable. Personally, I'm uncomfortable with anything less than $150,000, $200,000 in cash. But some people are comfortable with 10.
So that you can know confidently if anything happened. Guys, this isn't just so that he can spend more. It's so that he can be comfortable if he ever lost his job, because we recognize the volatility of
number 1, my job is volatile. Number 2, we have a very expensive lifestyle. And number 3, I'm the only one that earns income. So there's a lot of risk associated with job loss when there's 100% one person working.
You might consider, as you're handling your finances and handling your budget, like if you lost your job and had 3 months, because we've been in scenarios where it's taken 6-7 months to get a new job.
Yeah.
Like if you had to go 3 months without a job, which is probably very terrifying right now, but if you looked at the reality of it, and if 3 months without a job equaled $50,000 or $60,000, like that should be the starting point in your savings for you to have, especially if you have a family, just so that you can not have to pull the money out of your house or borrow money or immediately have to move or whatever. So these are just some things that we can continue to talk about, hopefully in future episodes, or if you want to send a message out to us, we're totally happy to be transparent about the finances.
We're not financial advisors, and we don't pretend to be, but I can tell you that we've been able to feed a wife and 7 kids on 1 income in Silicon Valley for the last 20-something years. So
Amen.
We're doing something right. And,
that's right.
And we hope that you take these and other podcasts and find something useful that you can use to forward your own dreams and goals. And we appreciate and care for everybody who watches and tunes into the Jeff Heilman Project.
And get excited about your financial future, because it's out
it's
there
worth
for
getting
you.
Excited about.
It's worth getting excited about. God
Thanks,
bless
everybody.
you guys, and we'll see you next time on the Jeff Heilman Project. Thanks for sharing, subscribing, and doing all of those awesome things.